I was the first person in my family to get a master's or a PhD, the second person to get my bachelor's degree. And so really coming from a family that didn't have kind of the support there and couldn't really guide me in terms of my educational pursuits, um, I, I entered the doctoral program, but then really felt like I was kind of flailing around, not really sure what I was doing, not sure how to do this. Luckily, my mentor at University of Chicago was an MFP fellow and encouraged me to apply to the program. And so it really, I think, gave me a grounding. I think that it really helped me to feel confident, like I belonged in the school at the University of Chicago. It really helped me to develop as a professional and to really begin to see myself as a researcher, as a scholar, that I had something valuable to contribute. And so I think that really not only did it give me the networks and those things, but I think internally it gave me that sense of who I am and that I could do this and that I really had something valuable to contribute. And so I think that that has really stayed with me, this sense of knowing and valuing my voice. I've always wanted to work with African American families. I think the reason why I came back to school was because as a child protection worker, I was working with families of color, and a lot of times I was still looking at the literature, still trying to understand like how do I do this job, and oftentimes really saw what was being written about African American families as pathological, that really not from a real strengths perspective. The things that they were sort of saying were sort of deficits or seen as negative. I was seeing as strength and resilience of our families, and so really began to question many of the things that were happening with our families. And so I think that was kind of the impetus, but really what the fellowship did for me, particularly because I was a SAMHSA fellow, really introduced me to substance abuse. And I, like, again, in practice, I was dealing with families that had substance abuse issues, but really didn't know how to think about that and how to work with these families. And so being a SAMHSA fellow and really kind of focusing on substance abuse and then moving into the areas of trauma really helped to shape my work, and I'm still doing that. I mean, even though I've shifted somewhat from child protection to now looking at criminal justice and looking at women who are in prostitution and being sex trafficked, the core of my work is still substance abuse and trauma, and will always be. I mean, it gave me a passion that I didn't know I had until I started working in it, started studying it, started having to sort of develop my ideas as a SAMHSA fellow, that it really kind of gave me this passion that I didn't have and this desire to really want to know more about how to help and work with families that are affected by substance abuse. I would say that to me that's the crux or the cornerstone of this program is the relationships and the networks. I really truly feel like it is a family, and I was talking yesterday or gave a talk to some of the fellows yesterday, and I was very candid in my talk, and I was sort of saying to someone else that had I been in any other venue or any other setting, I probably would have said half of the things that I said, but feeling like I can come to you and be myself and be honest and give it to the fellows in a real way that I think sometimes they don't always get. And so I think that for me, it started as a fellow of just having a safe place where we could just vent and we could talk and we could just kind of do that. But then connecting me with other people whose experiences were very similar to mine, and so I'm like, okay, I'm not crazy. It's nothing going on. And so being able to have that, and still many of the fellows that I were in the program with are our friends and our colleagues, and so I think that in terms of your question, the relationships that I sustained or are developed in the program are the ones that I still have professional. I look forward to coming to these conferences just to reconnect with many of the fellows. I think that it was here that I was mentored, and so that is why I have such a feels called to do that with others. That I know that had I not had this program, and had I not had mentors helping me and guiding me, that I would not be this far in my career. And so have felt that it was so important to give that back. And so every opportunity I can, I do give that back. And that to me is really comes from the relationships that I built. I'm glad that this kind of program existed, and it just reminds me of the Talented 10th. It reminds me of W.E.B. Du Bois, and just being a part of this elite group. And I feel pride to be a part of it. I feel pride to be amongst one of many that have been touched by this program, and that I'm just so grateful that SAMHSA is still funding this program and still doing it, because I think not only are they disseminating this idea of substance abuse and mental health and getting all of these professionals out there that are doing this work, but it's meant to me professionally, but also personally, and it's really touched my life